I have been working on making a boat since quarantine started in late March, and part of the reason it's taken so long is because I actually made two boats. These are some pictures of the first one, and I finished the whole project and even edited the video, but I just really did not like the way that the project or the video turned out. And I'll explain a little bit what went wrong with the first boat in the description a little bit, but all this to say that this video is my second attempt. I started by cutting 8 inches off of all the ends of my 8-foot material I used. And I used mostly 2x3s to make this boat because that's just what I had on hand. And I didn't really want to waste a lot of money on material on something I wasn't great at making yet. Next, I ripped the 2x3 into 1/8 inch strips, and I was able to get about 12 of these strips out of each 2x3, and I needed about 50 of them. I glued up the 1/8 inch strips in pairs and bent them around a 12-inch block while the glue dried to hold the shape. After cutting and gluing all those strips, I ended up with about 25 of these bent pieces. Now I need to shape them all to have a radius and a bevel. And in my barrel making video, I used my table saw and a sled to do this, but a curve this big was just not possible. So I made this jig that holds the stave at a 5-degree angle. And then I'm also going to use an electric planer with some wood rails that will act as like a flush trim bit. Now you can see how the curve and the bevel turned out, and this jig actually worked very well. There was a couple of pieces that I had to tune up with the block plane, but I ended up with almost no gaps between the pieces when I was done, and that was probably the biggest problem with the first boat was the gaps. Next, I have to glue together the bent pieces, and I know a lot of people are not going to like this, but I used a pin nailer to put the pieces together. It just would have taken way too long to have to glue each piece, clamp it, and then wait for the glue to dry. So I just used a pin nailers to make it faster. Once the glue dried, I used some sanders to shape the inside and the outside of the boat the rest of the way, and I also used a pull saw to cut off the ends flat. Now I'll make some trim pieces to finish everything up, and you'll also notice that the ends are still open, so I'll make something for that as well. The final step was to waterproof this boat with some epoxy, and I put on 2 coats, sanding in between. This boat is a lot better than the first one I made, but it's still very far from perfect. One of the many things that I'd change about this is the shape. It's way too round on the bottom, so it's going to be very tippy. So if I were to make this again, I'd make the bottom flat. And I definitely plan on trying to make a better one in the future as soon as the thought doesn't make me sick.